The federal government, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, just announced their new updated climate plan, which now is going to focus on Canada's activities to lower its greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the issues that's going to be an important part of that plan is what to do about the melting in the high Arctic, melting of the ice up there and the rise in sea level. So we're going to talk to Professor Warwick Vincent of Laval University about that issue. And welcome to the interview, Warwick.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for having me. So
now, I confess this is not an issue or a topic, story that I've reported on much. So I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could give us an overview of the issue, please.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. So we're working on this, excuse me, northern region of Ellesmere Island, the northern region of the Canadian High Arctic, really the top of Canada. And it's along this area, along this coastline, actually the northernmost coastline in the world that extends all the way to Greenland, that we find the thickest ice in the Arctic basin, the thickest ice in the Arctic Ocean. And this is really important because sea ice is disappearing incredibly rapidly across the Arctic. And we're very concerned about the future of habitat for polar bears, for marine mammals, for marine life in general. And of course, this ice is so culturally important to the people who live in the north, especially the Inuit. And so this region along the northern coastline is of such utmost importance because it's there that the ice accumulates. And we think that this will be a refuge for marine species in the future, at least up until 2050, maybe beyond that. It's kind of a last region there for cold-loving life. But what we're seeing, and we've been working up there now for about 20 years or so, is that even this region of the thickest ice, it's called the last ice area. We think it's the last area that will retain summer ice and thereby protect the ecosystem. But even in this area, we're now seeing rapid change. And this year, for example, we saw the loss of half of the last remaining ice shelf in the area, the Milne ice shelf, a huge section of it, the size of Manhattan, carved off and disappeared away with its ecosystem.
Right.
What that means, sorry.
My understanding is that you're asking the federal government to give this area protection.
That's correct. So at the moment, this area has interim protection as the result of a partnership between an Inuit organization, Kikitani Inuit Association, and the federal government. It has had interim protection, or at least a portion of it, until 2024. And what we're asking is that this protection really should be in perpetuity. This is such a critical zone for planet Earth.
So we have the local habitat, the Arctic wildlife populations, marine life, and so on. But my understanding is that the melting of this ice, or Arctic ice generally, is leading to an increase in global sea levels of about 0.7 of a millimeter every year, which is of great concern to scientists.
Well, I think more and more we're realizing that what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic, that we're all affected by the Arctic. And you're absolutely right, sea level is the most worrying aspect of this in the short term. We've got the Greenland ice cap. We're seeing glaciers associated with that have lost their protective cap and now melting at unprecedented rates. That ice is the equivalent of a 9-meter rise in sea level if we lose all of it. Well, of course, that would take a huge amount of time, but even small changes are enough to greatly worry us here in Canada and around the world with our coastal cities.
And I would assume, and this will be the last question, Warwick, but I would assume that the only real protection for this ice and for the high Arctic in general is to arrest global warming and stay 1.5 degrees or less by the end of the century.
Absolutely. So these conservation zones are critically important, more important than ever, as interim measures to prevent those other stresses, such as shipping and resource extraction, that climate change is superimposed on and acts as an amplifier of. But the ultimate protection is only greenhouse gas mitigation and the respect of the Paris Agreement to keep that down to 1.5 degrees or less. And the models are quite clear. It makes a huge difference in the security of this area and the security of planet Earth.
Warwick, thank you very much. Really appreciate this information.
You're very welcome.